It's time for the Jim Masters Show Live, entertainment lifestyle celebrity talk show series. Look at your screen. An incredible guest, celebrated composer, songwriter, arranger, synthesist, pianist, and so much more. Conductor, Jay Asher, joining us right here on the Jim Masters Show. Good to have you with us. I'm your host, Jim Masters, and it's a pleasure to have you guys here watching from all around the world. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good day today. Of course, this is the place to come where we have great conversations. We're bringing back the Lost Art conversation here in style in what we call JMS Levity Hall, with our viewers watching from all around the world, those who watch live, those who watch in the JMS archives. We archive everything for you as well. You can see almost we're just a couple of shows away from 1,000 episodes we have done in just 3.5 years as of today. Now, if you're watching this 6 months from now, we're well past that. Hey, good to have you with us. Thanks for all the great comments, all the levity as we call it, all the emails we've been receiving is extraordinary. Thanks so much for that. The tweets, the Instagram messages, the Facebook messages, sharing the links, clicking like, subscribing to our YouTube channel. We welcome all new subscribers. Thank you very much. It doesn't cost anything. Just click that subscriber button on the YouTube channel. Don't forget also, some people ask, oh, when is the show on and who's the guest? Click the notification bell. There's a little notification bell icon there. And when you click that, you'll get alerts from us. You never miss an episode. You can participate with us as well. Guys and gals who follow our show all the time, you guys know that it's a very interactive broadcast, so you can participate with us as well. And again, we hope your day's going well. And boy, we're going to have some great times with our special guest, because Jay is also going to perform live for us as well. Now, Jay is he's a renowned name in the industry, and he's worked with some of the most incredible people in the industry as well. He has written songs, he's arranged, he's been a musical director for many well-known talents and celebrities and so much more. And here are just a few of the names that Jay has had an opportunity to work with. He has written songs for Whitney Houston and Donna Summer and Julio Iglesias. Yes, he has also served as musical director for Neil Diamond and even one of our beloveds, Carol Burnett. Yes, Bobby Gentry. Minnie Riperton, of course. Yes, another great. And somebody who was a guest on our show, the incomparable Rosalind Kind. Of course, you know her as well, not only being an incredible vocalist herself, but also sister to Barbra Streisand. And even Donald O'Connor. He's also responsible for music in Zorro and Fame on NBC. And also this, you remember this as well. This is Fugitive Nights. These are just a few of the things and projects he's been involved in. Hitting It, another great one too. Also, music for Nanny Insanity. I'm sure these are bringing back some memories for you too. Blame It On Rio. And of course, this terrific. There's, of course, JFK, Reckless Youth, and McDreamy there. And also Disney Under Wraps. As I mentioned, he has made music his life all these years, and we are so excited. He's coming to us from the San Fernando Valley area, and we're going to be talking about some of these incredible folks that he's had an opportunity to, of course, work with, but also things that he's working on even today as we do this episode of the Jim Masters Show Live series. I want to tell you a little bit about his extraordinary background, as again, we do welcome Jay in just a second. If you want to comment during the show, as I mentioned, don't forget, you can absolutely do that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can comment during the show in the Levity Hall chat room. And of course, give the episode a like and leave a comment underneath the episode as well. Jay is a composer, songwriter. He's also a singer and vocalist himself, an entertainer, arranger, orchestrator, conductor, pianist, synthesist, and an entertainer who's based in Los Angeles and has been since 1972. He was raised in the Boston area, graduate from Boston Conservatory of Music, with a Bachelor of Music and Music Composition. He did postgraduate orchestration study with renowned Los Angeles orchestrator Dr. Albert Harris. As a composer, he has written music scores and songs for many TV series, TV movies of the week, and films including New World Television's Zorro, NBC's Fame, the NBC movie of the week, Fugitive Nights. More recently, he composed the score for the Lionsgate hip hop comedy, Hittin' It, and co scored with Adam Malamote the independent comedy, Nanny Insanity, as well as scoring DVD documentaries on the lives of Laura Ingalls Wilder and more. He has written songs that have been recorded by Julio Iglesias, as we mentioned, Whitney Houston, Donna Summer, among many others. And really cool stuff. Among the films and TV movies he's arranged, orchestrated, and or conducted for: Paramount Pictures' Blame It On Rio, NBC TV's miniseries JFK, Reckless Youth. And he has served as musical director and or accompanist, as I mentioned, for Neil Diamond, Bobby Gentry, Carol Burnett, Minnie Riperton, Donald O'Connor, Rosalind Kind, as well as playing piano and keyboards for various TV and film projects, commercials, and he's been featured as a lead vocalist on songs for several TV movies and films, including Disney's Under Wraps. He's also an Apple certified Logic Pro trainer, an expert on integrating Vienna Ensemble Pro with Logic Pro X. If you don't know what I just said, we'll explain that. He teaches Logic Pro X at the Songwriting School of Los Angeles, and he's a sought-after private consultant for many well-known film and TV composers and recording artists. That is just the short list of the experience of our extraordinary guest. Yes, he's beachside right now. And we're going to welcome him to our show. It's an honor and a pleasure. Jay Asher joining us here on the Jim Master Show. Jay, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jim. Pleasure to be here.
I tell you, what a background, Todd. You've been in the LA area since 1972. How could that be? You look like you're 34.
I have a landmark birthday coming at the end of the month, and I am not going to give you the number, except, I don't know how
What's
I
the
got
day? What's the day?
there. September 28th.
September 28th. Fabulous. You're a Libra, and that's 4 days after my birthday on the 24th. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Isn't that incredible? So you're a Libra and you're a fall baby, September baby like me. And and you grew up on the East Coast in New England and Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, I grew up. What you see in the background there is Winthrop Beach in Winthrop, Massachusetts, which is 5 miles, as we say, north of Boston, on the North Shore.
Right.
Yeah, it was a. This video was shot by a classmate of mine who still lives there named Rich Honan, and I use it as my backdrop. It just, I don't know, makes me feel good, makes me feel connected.
Now, are you a Red Sox fan? Lifelong
Yeah, it's painful as that is this year. Yeah, I am, but
Celtics,
mostly I'm a Celtics fan.
Celtics.
Ball should be round, not oval. That's my position, and I'm sticking to it.
Very interesting. It's the
title. No, I don't care about
that's the title of his next song, folks.
Yeah, I don't care about the Patriots, but yeah, I'm passionate about the Celtics.
Oh, yeah, the days of Larry Bird and all the greats. Yeah, great team. So, growing up in Massachusetts, in the Bay State, in the Commonwealth, were you exposed early on to music within the family? What spurred on the interest for a career?
Well, my dad,
phenomenal career in music.
My dad was a drummer, and by the time I came along, he stopped doing it full time because that was no life for his young wife and his young child. But he still drummed on the weekends all the time when I was growing up. And my first gigs really were playing with my dad. But I started singing when I was about 5. I think I was on a stage when I was 5. And by the time I was 11, I was performing with a children's troupe called the Novelettes. And we would play all these things. So it was all like, another opening, another show in Philly, Boston, this kind of stuff. And, there was never any question that I was going to be a musician. It just, I'm not very woo-woo about stuff like this, but I think, it clearly what I was put on this earth to do, for better or worse.
Did you get involved in school plays and bands and all kinds of different things over the years?
Yep. And then I played in rock bands and I played in lounges. And, then a year before I graduated, I thought, well, what am I going to do with this? I wasn't really a heavily classically trained musician. I'd had some light classical piano for 4 or 5 years. And Berkeley at that time was strictly a jazz school, and I wasn't a jazz player. And also, it wasn't accredited, and my parents didn't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
So, Boston Conservatory, even though it was a classical school, they had a 2-year jazz arranging course. And the dean of the school had been a big band pianist and everything, and, liked the songs I was writing. And it was absolutely the right school for me. If I had gone to New England Conservatory, I would have been over my head with the classical music. And like I say, Berkeley just wasn't an option. So I was fortunate that I ended up really at the perfect school for me. And some of the happiest years of my life. I just loved it there. I had a handful of great teachers that just showed me what music, the whole spirit of what it could be, and got exposed to all kinds of different styles of music. And it was a great experience for me.
What were you listening to at the time? What was the music of choice for you that you enjoyed, Jay?
I loved a whole bunch. I mean, I was writing avant-garde music at Boston
Right.
Conservatory, but
Right.
really my passion always was pop music, particularly Burt Bacharach and Hal David.
Oh,
Burt
yeah.
was, definitely the biggest influence on me, no
Did you
doubt
ever
about
get a
it.
chance to meet Bert?
Yeah, I got to meet Burt twice. You know, you know what they say about meeting your heroes. It's not that there was anything wrong with the meeting. It's just like he wasn't all that present. His mind was probably on what he was going to perform and what he was going to say. And,
Right.
so it
Focused.
wasn't
Yeah.
they weren't big moments, but still, it was Burt Bacharach, along with meeting him and meeting some of my other heroes like Roy Orbison, and things like that. I got to meet some people that, I never dreamed I would get to meet. And, I'm certainly pleased for it.
You've
You know,
also had an opportunity not only to meet, but work with some extraordinary people on various different levels over the years as well. You're developing the education, you come from, the musical background within the family. What were some of those early opportunities, door opening opportunities for you, Jay, that sort of propelled things in a forward moving direction for you in your career?
well, I had the house lounge band at the Boston Playboy Club, and there was a room upstairs where various performers would come and perform. And a girl came in named Brandy Perry. And Brandy had been with a group called Brandy Perry and the Bubble Machine that became kind of notorious because they were doing a UFO show in the Vietnam era, and they got shot up, and a couple of them got killed. Well, I was already very much focused on trying to get people to do my songs. And I played a couple of them for Brandy, and she liked them and right away put them in her show. I did arrangements and she put them in. And she said, I'm tired of being on the road. If I get a steady gig in Los Angeles, would you come out and play for me? And I said, sure, thinking, well, that's never going to happen. And 3 months later, she called me and offered me a job. And that's how I ended up coming to LA. And as soon as I got to LA, I started, trying to see publishers and play my songs for them. And, that was my initial focus, was to be a singer-songwriter. I mean, that's what I thought most. I wanted to score films because Burt and Randy Newman, my other hero, did and stuff.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
thought I was going to be a recording artist. That's what I really came to LA to do. And it didn't work out that way. It came close a couple of times. I almost got signed twice to labels, but it didn't happen. But I started to write with other people, particularly Paul Jabara. And Paul was connected to everybody and really knew how to operate politically. He was very much part of a elite group of gays that had come from New York. And he knew everybody and met everybody. And writing with Paul was a big help for me. That's how I got most of my songs recorded, was Paul.
Were you working also on a lot of, in session with other session musicians, doing jingles, commercials, all kinds of different things that were coming along your way at that time?
Yeah, I started to play piano on toy commercials for a guy named Steve Zuckerman, and he He used me on a lot of toy commercials that I was
Really?
playing for.
Do you remember which
And
ones?
oh God, no.
Mattel or
It was a
Hasbro
lot.
or
I
yeah.
don't think they were quite that level, but but on the other hand, you got paid union scale and you got royalties, and it was a nice thing to do, and it got me used to playing in the studio with other musicians, which is very different from playing live. It is, playing in the studio is a very different skill set.
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
very different skill set, and it was great experience for me. And I formed a top 40 band, and we were playing all over LA doing covers 5, 6 nights a week. And it just, anytime something came along that I'd never done before, I would take it because I thought someday having done this would come in handy for me. And that was definitely true.
And of course, around that time, that Moog, the synthesizer, was getting big. Were you dabbling in that as well?
I had a much less sophisticated one. My original stack, and people who were from my era of keyboard players will know what I'm talking about. I had a Fender Rhodes suitcase, and on top of that, I had a Hohner clavinet, and on top of that, I had a little synthesizer called a Univox Mini Korg, and then I had a string machine called a Univox Multiman. So I had 4 keyboards going there, and that was a lot of sounds that I could create out of it. So I wouldn't say that I'm a synthesist and that I'm a programmer. I'm a synthesist in that I can play a synthesizer and I know how to tweak sounds a little bit, but I'm not a programmer.
Which would be somebody like a Kayla Hoff or something like that who would be
Yeah,
really
Bo
super.
Tomlin. Bo
Yeah.
Tomlin was one of the big ones.
Yeah.
There were Eric Persing. Was a great Jeff Rona. They were all real programmers. I
Right.
wasn't that.
But still, playing, getting involved in not only, as a musician and an arranger and a composer, but also a performer yourself, a vocalist, a singer yourself.
Yeah, that's what I
Been
did first, and it's always been part of my career.
How great is that to be able to do that? To still be able to express that and, to not only create music, but also to interpret it as well. But
Yeah.
at the same time, you've had these opportunities to, write music for extraordinary people like Whitney Houston. How did that come about for you, Jay?
Well, once again, this is all Paul Jabara. Paul and I had written a song for the movie Endless Love.
Oh, yeah.
And we were in the studio with the one of the producers. It wasn't Dino De Laurentiis, somebody who worked for him. And really, frankly, it was a waste of time because they'd already made a contact with Lionel Richie to write the
Yes.
song. And, that was a hit twice, so it's hard to argue with their choice. But Paul and I thought we'd written a really good song. So we said, let's change it from Endless Love to Eternal Love. Now, Paul had done several albums, and Paul was a really good singer and dancer and performer. He was in the original cast of Hair. He was in the London production of Jesus Christ Superstar. And so he was really good. But unfortunately, like a lot of people in that era, he started to use a lot of coke, and it really played havoc with his voice. So when it came time for him to do another album, he decided he was going to do an album called Paul Jabara and Friends and enlist some other people. One of them was the Weather Girls, who had a big hit with It's Raining Men,
Yeah.
and which unfortunately I didn't write with him. Paul Schaefer wrote that with him when Paul was in New York. But he found Whitney Houston through her mother, Cissy Houston, who was a very well-known backup singer.
Absolutely.
And he said to me, this girl is going to be a big star. She's a great singer and she's gorgeous. And, he went off to New York and he recorded it with her and said to the head of CBS, which is the label, you really need to sign her and promote her. And I think, what was his name? Al Teller, I think it was, said, oh, we don't see it. And of course, later Clive Davis did. And we know we met Whitney. I know she used to do the song as the second song in her show for many years and stuff, but I never actually met Whitney because Paul recorded her in New York.
Right. And you were on the West Coast,
Yeah,
exactly. But how
yeah,
about also writing material for Donna Summer?
yeah. Well, Paul, of course, wrote Last Dance. You know,
Yes.
and after that, we would go through what we called our biannual Donna Summer Disappoint-a-thon, where we would write a song for her, and she would sing the demo, and she would sing the living crap out of it. Just
Yeah, yeah,
wonderful, because she was, to me, one of my 3 or 4 favorite female singers of all time. I
yeah.
frankly prefer her to Whitney. I'd rather listen to Donna,
Donna.
but it would just never get on the album, and she would always blame the producer, and she'd say, look, I'm struggling to get the songs I'm writing on the album and everything like that. But nonetheless, she did a improv on a song of Paul's called Something's Missing in My Life. And later, Paul got permission to combine hers with his, and he put it on one of his albums. And so I can legitimately say Donna Summer recorded my song, even though nothing that much happened with it. But
Still,
I
yeah.
got to meet her several times, and she was a very nice lady. She did, because I was Jewish and she was a born again Christian, she did try to proselytize me one time. We got together to write a song. And that isn't really why I was there. She wanted to convert me, and that didn't go so well. I told her that if in her understanding, if Gandhi didn't accept Jesus as her Lord and Savior, does he go to heaven? And she said, in my understanding, no. And I basically said to her, well, Donna, if Gandhi doesn't go there, I don't want to be there. And she took it very well.
Yeah,
She was not
yeah.
offended.
No,
She was
it's all
very
in
sweet
jest
about
and
it.
humor, right?
Yeah, she was very sweet about it. And she really was a lovely lady. And her husband, Bruce
S-
Sedano, was a terrific guy. And
Yeah.
yeah, I really, the few times I was with Donna, I thoroughly enjoyed her company. She was from Boston too. She was from
That's
Dorchester. So
Dorchester. That's right.
she'd always say, "Oh, my friend from Boston," so
That's it. I hear just a little of the Boston accent. A little bit it comes out. Not
yeah,
it's not
I still talk,
thick,
I
but it's
still
still
can talk
there.
my car in Harvard Yard. Yeah,
Yeah, Worcester, right? You say Worcester
Worcester.
and
It's
Cape
Worcester.
Cod. You say Cape Cod.
No, that's New York. New York say car.
Cod.
Bostonians say car.
Cape Cod. Cape
Cape
Cod.
Cod. Yeah. And by the way, we do not say Boston. We say Boston. But we do
Boston, right?
park our car in Harvard Yard.
You pack the con Harvard, yeah.
Except you can't, because they'll tow you. If you park your car
Well,
in Harvard Yard, forget about it. They'll
you are
tow it.
gone.
Yeah.
Julio Iglesias, another
Yeah.
fantastic talent.
Yeah. Now, Julio is the most amazing experience of all.
Yeah.
When it came time for him to do his first English album, everybody wanted to be on that album
Oh yeah.
because he sold millions of records worldwide, because he was very smart. He'd put out an album in Italian, he'd put out one in Spanish,
Oh
and
yeah.
CBS was determined to break him here. And
Yes.
Paul got to know him and was hanging out with him. And I don't even want to know what else Paul was doing with Julio and his entourage. But he had heard our song Eternal Love. And he said to Paul, I love this song. I'm going to record it, but I'd like a new song.
Yeah.
And so Paul called me. He says, you have to come over. He said, we have to write a new song. He said, Julio is not going to record Eternal Love because somebody else has already done it before. He wants one. So we have to write something somewhat similar. And so we sat down and wrote Two Lovers. And right away, we just knew we had the right thing. And he called Julio, who was at Sunset Sound recording. And Julio said, come on over and play it for us. So we went over there and I played it and Paul sang it. And Julio loved it, made us play it over and over again. He had this big entourage there, all these pretty girls and all these other people there. And he said, is it really mine? I have been in the room with Barbara Streisand and Neil Diamond, all these people, and felt off stage no charisma at all, just people. Julio lights up a room like nobody lights up a room when he wants to turn it on.
Yeah.
And he did. My wife, Rosemary, said that she thought I arrived home 15 minutes ahead of my car. I was so jacked up from the whole experience. But then we went through a period where It's on the album. It's off the album. It's on the album. It's off the album. And Paul was working politically like crazy to make sure it was on the album. And it was. And the album sold 5 million copies. And, some of which probably got returned. I think CBS, probably bought a lot of them themselves because they were determined to break him as an artist. Yeah. But nonetheless, it was very good for me. I made, very nice money from it for a few years. And
it adds to your name recognition. More people are like, okay, who's responsible for some of this? Yeah. And then, Jay Asher. And then what did that lead to from there?
Nothing that you can trace directly to Blanca, and then with Chapel Intersong, and I got to write with Dean Pitchford, who was another Academy Award. I wrote with 2 Academy Award winners, and Grammy winners. Yes. But I also wrote with other great lyricists like Kathy Wakefield, who wrote the lyrics to Find 100 Ways, and Enoch Anderson, who wrote a lot of lyrics for Barry Manilow. So I got to just work with fantastic people. I was writing all the time, and it was
Were you pinching yourself during that as you're working with these phenomenal people?
Not really. Not either to my credit or my discredit. I remember when Dean Pitchford, when we were writing, he played me the song from Fame, and he asked me what I thought about it. And I said, it's a great song, but I can't relate to the lyric. He said, really? I said, yeah, I don't care about fame. I want the work. I'd like to make some money, but the people will see me and die and remember my name and all that stuff. I never cared about any of that. And part of the reason I worked so well with Paul is that he was very competitive with some of the other guys he wrote with. He wrote with Bob Esty and Bruce Roberts, and they were all part of the hip gay crowd, and they all wanted the attention and the notoriety. And I was this, straight guy from the Valley who went back to my wife and hung out with my wife, and I didn't care about any of that. So Paul always knew that with me, there was no competitive aspect. Also, too, he tended to write disco things with them, and more with me, we wrote ballads. And he'd always tease me and say, "You're so corny." But believe me, he was way cornier than me. We wrote a song called Beautiful Dreamer that he did on one of his albums. And his arrangement is Paul in Wonderland with harp glissandi and all this stuff. And that was way schmaltzier than I ever would have done in an arrangement. So he would kiddingly tell me how corny I was. But believe me, he had a corny side. And what he liked about working with me is that he was free to be corny with me.
Free to be corny.
Yeah.
But you did have involvement with Fame, right?
Well, the song I was telling you about, Beautiful Dreamer, was done on the show by Valerie Landsberg.
Yes.
With the pianist who played Bruno, whose name eludes me at the minute. Senior moment, wonderful. Lee something. Yeah. Anyhow, they did Beautiful Dreamer on the show, and it was put out on a Kids from Fame album too.
That's right, exactly. And people also might not realize this as well, the complete soundtrack, Zorro.
This was my biggest success. I did that for 4 years.
How did this come about for you, this opportunity?
Okay. So my manager for many years was a guy named John Feldheimer. He handled a lot of TV actors like Dean Butler and a lot of TV actors and stuff. And I was doing musical director work for them because they sang too. Skip Stevenson was another one.
Oh yeah.
So John took a job though in TV as vice president of New World Television. By the way, now he's CEO of Lionsgate and one of the most wealthy and powerful people in Hollywood, and still always returns my phone call. He became a good friend. My wife worked for him as his secretary.
Wow.
So I get a call. I get a call from John one day. He says, "I have good news and bad news for you." And I said, "What's the good news?" He said, "I have a TV series here, and if they like a theme song you write for it, you'll get to score the show." I said, "What's the bad news?" He said, "Well, they've got an all-in budget of $80,000, and you won't be scoring it every week. You're going to create a music library and then a couple of times a year you'll add to the library, which is how it worked. And I wrote the theme song with the lyricist Dennis Spiegel, and they loved the theme song, and I got the show. And so that's exactly what happened. Now, it was not a huge success here in America. It's funny. I'll bet you most Americans never saw it because it was on the Family Channel on cable at a time when not everybody had cable, and not everybody who had cable had the Family Channel. But it did develop a cult following. Sure. And then what I discovered about 4 or 5 years later is that it was a much bigger deal in Europe. It was a big deal in England and Spain and Italy and Germany and Japan and the Philippines. Yeah. And I started to get royalty checks from all over the world. And that lasted about 20, 25 years. I mean, Zorro really turned out to be great. And on Facebook, there is a page called From Out of the Night, which is one of the lines of the theme song. And these kids watch this show constantly. And I got on there and they say, "Oh, you're a legend." And I go, "Yeah, right. The legend's eating a tuna fish sandwich right now." And I said, "Look at guys, I'm pleased you like it so much. I think I did a nice job and it was a nice little show, but it wasn't that big a deal." And I got a private note from one of the members and he said, "Jay, you don't get it." He said, "Kids like me," he said, "I was picked on in school mercilessly. And I would go home in tears and I'd sit down and Zorro would come on with the theme song about, and I'd watch this show and enjoy it for a half hour. And it helped me get through my teenage years." And I found out that for some reason, this show struck that kind of chord with a lot of people. And that's when I realized that everything you do in this business is pebbles in the pond.
That's right.
You don't know how it affects people. And so now when I think about it, I'm particularly grateful that, I had the chance to touch some people's lives with my work.
Sometimes you don't realize till later as well, the lives that you've touched, until you bump into somebody or somebody sends a note or whatever it is. And it's extraordinary. And sometimes you don't know the life something takes on or takes it on again, like a love affair with something, which is extraordinary too, huh?
Yeah, my big disappointment is there's 80 episodes of it that, like I say, most Americans never have seen. It's a good show. Duncan Regehr was great. It was done on location in Spain, so it has good production values. And my one disappointment is they never seem to have been able to syndicate it.
I was going to say, could they see it anywhere? Is it anywhere to be?
Every once in a while, it pops up on Tubi or some of these little channels and stuff like this. They were selling a box set for a while, but I don't think that's still available. In fact, now the box set goes for a lot of money on eBay.
Collectible. Right.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, because it's so rare to find. So if you get one, exactly. Yeah. Also, another you had partaken in, Fugitive Nights. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I don't know the whole truth about how I got this.
Yeah.
Because John would tell me that it was his policy that he would recommend me if he thought I was right for something, but he would never order people to hire people. He thought it was a bad business practice.
And this was an NBC movie of the week, people may
right.
recall.
And so I went to have a meeting for it and, hoping to get it. And I was familiar with the book and familiar with Joe Wamba. And I made my pitch and I said, "Look, you're going to see guys here, one of whom's a friend of mine, who have more credits than me. But you're not going to hire somebody who wants to do this show more than I do and who'll work harder to give you what you want." And they ended up hiring me. Now, how much the fact that they knew I was John Feldheimer's friend played into it, and how much my pitch played into it, and how much they liked my tape, I don't know. But I did get it, and it was great. I loved working on it. I think it's you can see this on one of the streaming services. I think it might be Amazon Prime. And it's a nice little TV movie. And it was great fun to do.
Another one is the hip hop comedy Hitting It. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all I'll say about this is that the title tells you pretty much all you would need to know about this. uh, I did it was a low budget thing, and they needed a score,
And they
and
needed music. Yeah.
yep, and they needed music, and they needed sort of R&B, kind of hip hoppy disco
Yeah.
stuff, and and I did it, and I'm fortunate in that when I work on a project, even if it isn't very good, I can suspend that in my mind as if it was a masterpiece
Oh, you were
and
able
work
to do
on it
that,
and work on it as if it were the greatest thing in the world. So I always have a good time, and I'm always doing the very best I can. But
which
would I
is
say to you, oh, you got to see this thing? No, not so much.
here's another too. Natty Insanity.
Yeah. Now, this is funny. I was teaching Logic Pro at UCLA Extension, and I had a young man in my class who wanted to learn Logic Pro named Adam Malamet. And it turned out his mother was producing this movie, and originally it had a different title. I'm trying to remember what the original title was now. Can't. Anyhow, they were working on this film, and he approached me and he said, "I'm in a little over my head. Will you help me with this?" And I said, "Sure, be happy to." So, we'll share the credit, and we'll work together on it. Well, he was also working a full-time job. And a couple of weeks later, his mom calls me and she said, "I'm afraid my son is going to have a nervous breakdown.
Mm.
He's just totally overwhelmed. He'd written some of the themes, some of the thematic material." She said, "I need you to take this over." So basically, I did. And it's actually a cute, funny little film. It
Yeah.
really is quite entertaining. And once again, I don't know how many people ever saw it. This one, I would say that if you see it, you'll probably enjoy it.
Which is fantastic. I mean, to have your stamp on so much of Americana in so many different ways. Even this one, Blame It on Rio.
Yeah. Now, this is another odd circumstance. So Dennis Spiegel, who had written the lyrics to Zorro, got hired to write a bunch of songs for this movie that, Michael Caine was in, and a lot of big people, and it was a big budget film. And the director was Stanley Donen, who did Singing in the Rain.
That's
And
right.
Dennis was going to work on the score with Williams' music editor, but he was also a composer. And they wanted pop songs in it. And Ken really didn't know very much about pop music. So they wrote some songs and they hired me to make them into pop arrangements that would be believable as pop music, which is what I did.
That's so cool. And then you move on to a little bit more of a serious topic. Patrick Dempsey starring in JFK Reckless Youth. Tell us
Yeah,
about this.
that was very challenging. The
Yeah.
composer, and geez,
It was a
honestly, this is terrible. I can't
yeah.
remember his name
It
now.
was a mini series on
Right,
NBC television
right.
for folks watching. Yeah.
And he was a composer, but he was kind of more like a project manager. He had a staff of people working on computers doing different things for the miniseries. He wrote the themes and all that, but he also had orchestrators, and he had people sequencing things with MIDI with samplers. And when it came time for the strings, they knew they wanted real strings on this.
Yeah.
And so they hired me to take the MIDI parts and make them into something that was really playable for real string players. Because playing samples on a computer, you can make them do things that real players can't. And the parts would go from eight harmony parts to two to eight, in ways that sounded fine on a sampler and a synthesizer, but made no sense for real players. So I had to take those MIDI parts and turn them into something that was actually playable for string parts. And then they also hired me to conduct the recording session where we recorded the strings. And that was a real challenge and great fun. I really loved doing that.
How long was that process to get it to that point where you were satisfied with it?
I think I probably, they were under the gun for time. So I probably did it in about 2 months of working long days, you know.
Do you like that? Do you like sometimes where you've got to really, put nose to the grindstone and crank it out quick, or do you like to spend some time and finesse and nuance it a little bit? In terms of just your own preference?
I have a fear, a terror of not making deadlines. So even when I have a long time to do something, I start right away. It's just, I'm not at all a procrastinator. My best friend in Los Angeles is a guy named David Michael Frank, wonderful composer. And for years, by the way, I printed scores out for him in Logic and stuff. And I learned anything I learned about putting music to picture, I learned from David Frank. But David always needs to have that pressure of being under the gun to force himself to write. And I used to always say to him, David, why are you doing this self? Because in those days, we didn't have the internet. So
Right.
he would have a session at 9 o'clock the next morning. And in the middle of the night, he'd have this guy delivering CDs to me with the Logic projects that I had to turn into the scores. And then he would pick them up from me and go back to David. And it was insane. But David liked working that way. I hated that. If you hire me for a job and you tell me I've got 6 months to do it, the day you get me the picture, I'm starting to work on it. I'm just not that guy.
Sometimes people will always ask who aren't in the industries, they're fascinated by how things are put together. The times where, and have you had these times more often than not, where the music comes before the video
I've never
versus
had that.
the
I've
video
never had that.
coming first and then writing the music to the video?
No, I've never
How
had
often would you say that is where that happens, where the music is before the actual even video or filming?
only with big budget films with big name directors and composers. You know, with a really, really big name director, he might bring the composer onto location to see the shooting and stuff like that to get them involved that early. But that's really only A-list people.
You've had an opportunity to do a lot with television, a lot with film as well, and in addition, provide your vocal prowess to a lot of the projects as well, including Disney Under Wraps. People can hear
Yeah,
you
David
singing on
Frank,
that.
David Frank, who I was telling you about, was
Yeah.
doing the score for it. And they wanted to use the song All By Myself, Eric Carmen, all by myself, don't want to live,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
couldn't afford to license the master. So David hired me to do a sound, and I did a track and my vocal and everything, and basically tried to do a sound alike of the Eric Carmen record.
How cool is that, huh?
It was
So when
fun. It was fun.
when people watch that, you're on it doing it.
Yeah, you hear me singing it. Yep. It was fun.
Well, in addition to being a vocalist, being a musician, a conductor, arranger, all the rest, you've had an opportunity to be a musical director and accompanist for a lot of other well-known folks as well. One of the names you mentioned, Neil Diamond. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
Well, I actually only had one experience with Neil Diamond, and it was not the greatest experience. I got called to play rehearsal piano for I was going to be there for 3 days, I was told, and it paid me every day, and I went in there and mostly I sat around till it came time to rehearse a medley of his hits that Neil was going to do.
Yeah.
So Neil comes over to the piano and they put the chart in front of me. Now, I have to tell you, I was and am a massive Neil Diamond fan. I love his singing. I love his songwriting. Huge fan. But Neil was really stressed out about this. He kept pacing and chain smoking. And, you would have thought, that his whole career was riding on this. I guess that's just his makeup. So we sit down to rehearse and, we're Sweet Caroline, all these things. And we get to Forever in Blue Jeans. Do you know the song? Money talks.
Absolutely.
It don't down and it don't walk. Long as I can have you here with me, I'd much rather be forever in blue jeans. Yeah. So I'm reading the chart and I'm playing it. And Neil says, "Stop. You're playing it wrong." I go, "Oh." He says, "Play it again." I play it again. He says, "Stop. You're playing it wrong." And I said, "Neil, that's what's on the chart." And I said, "And respectfully, I know your record, you know." He says, "Well, I wrote the damn thing. And I'm telling you, it's wrong. I don't know what to do at this point because it's not wrong." Fortunately, his musical director, Tom Hensley, overhears what's going on. And he comes over. He says, "What's the problem?" Neil says, "He's playing it wrong and he won't admit it."
Mm.
He says, "Play it, Jay." And I play. He turns to Neil, who is, for all his talent, not a trained musician, not a school musician at all. He says, "Neil, he isn't playing it wrong. You're used to hearing it on guitar, not piano. It sounds different on guitar." And Neil goes, "Oh." That was it. So we finished rehearsing, and it wasn't the most pleasant experience,
But still,
on the other hand,
Carol Burnett
and Carol Burnett was on the show, and she was wonderful.
Isn't she the best?
She is just who you would expect her to be.
Absolutely. I had an opportunity to meet her.
She said, "Oh, I love Paul Jabara."
Yes, I had the luxury of meeting her. I was introduced to her, the whole routine, and she, it was really extraordinary. One of my favorite moments. People ask, who's one of your favorite people you've had an opportunity to meet, working in television, radio, and all. And she's right there, Carol Burnett.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, for those who haven't had the luxury, like you and I, to meet a Carol Burnett, she is everything you would hope. Watching her on TV, growing up with her, as many have, is she like that? Is she warm? Is she funny? Is she approachable? Is she affable? Are there no airs about her? Yes, 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 and yes. She's the real deal.
I'll tell you,
and a delight, isn't she?
She is, and she had a great effect on Neil because she got him to laugh and relax. And when Neil was around loosened him up tremendously. In the end, she signed a script for me, and Neil signed a script too, and wrote a very nice thing to me. So I don't think it was anything other than the fact that he was just really nervous about this.
Yeah, sort of probably a perfectionist, right?
Obviously, he only did one TV special, which was successful, and he only did one film, which was a massive hit, and never did another one.
Did you see A Beautiful Noise on Broadway?
No,
but a tribute to his life.
I'm dying to see it when it comes to L.A.
Somebody that I've known for quite a while, Nick Fradiani Jr., plays Neil Diamond on stage, and Nick won American Idol a few years ago. And Nick hails from New England as well, and he's there every almost several nights a week playing Neil, and it's like, he's loved Neil through all his life. His father, who's also a singer and musician, Nick Fradiani Sr., same thing, big Neil Diamond fan. And then he and his father, Nick Jr., Nick Sr., got a chance to, Nick Jr. has a residency at the Bitter End in New York, where Neil did as well, years back.
Sure, yeah.
Really an extraordinary experience for him. So,
I understand I understand there's a moment in the show where he talks as Neil Diamond and says the only time he was ever happy was when he was on the road performing, and that he would get home to his family, and even though he loved them, he couldn't wait to get back out on the road in front of audiences. So I guess that's just who he is. He's just that driven. Yeah.
So tell us again about the Carol Burnett experience.
Well, just like I say, the time she was there, she just lit up the entire room. I mean, everybody loved her. She just had a great effect on everybody involved with it,
And the project again?
This was his TV special, the Neil Diamond TV special. Yeah, the only one he ever did.
The only one he did. You also, Bobby Gentry, another legend. Tell us about the involvement with Bobby Gentry.
Yeah, I got to. Bobby Gentry had married Jim Stafford.
That's right.
Like spiders and yeah. They got married and they decided they were going to do a show together in Las Vegas. First, they were going to open for a couple of weeks in Denver, and then they were going to the Aladdin Hotel. And I don't even remember how I heard about this, but I went and I auditioned for it. And I played and sang Barry Manilow's Weekend in New England, when will our eyes meet? When can I touch you? And Bobby came from the entire other side of the room, right next to the piano, to listen to me. And they hired me for the gig. And it was very interesting because I was the only non-country music guy in the band. I was there because I could read well. I was a good reader, and but the band was great. Tremendous show. Unfortunately, their marriage didn't last. They had a kid, and then they got divorced. I think, frankly, she probably only married him because she wanted a kid. But it was a really good experience. Once again, I really enjoyed it.
Also, another legend, Minnie Riperton.
Yeah, I had a friend who was her musical director, Randy Waldman. And Randy said, I've got a rehearsal that same day that we're rehearsing for this show, and I can't make the rehearsal. Would you go and play piano and conduct for me? And if I don't make the gig in time, you'll do the gig. So I got to do the rehearsal with her and conduct it, and it was great fun. But Randy did show up in time to do the actual show.
But still, just have that opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So, what an extraordinary, unique voice. Loving You, of course.
Oh, amazing singer. And her husband was in the band. He was a very good musician.
Somebody else, too, that was a really delightful guest on our show. We'd love to have her back soon. Rosalind Kind, of course, Barbra Streisand's sister, but she's a phenomenal performer, vocalist of her own right. Tell us about Rosalind Kind, working with her.
Yeah, Gary Lamel at First Artist recommended me to her. She needed a new musical director. I don't remember what had happened to her previous one. And I went over and played for her, and we hit it off right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I was her musical director for about 5 or 6 years. And I loved working with Roz. She's a really good person and a really good singer. And she was doing some of my songs in her show, kind of pop stuff. And then she became friendly with Bud Cort, who's famous for Harold and Maude, of course. And Bud said, you shouldn't really be doing this pop stuff. I think you should be doing the Great American Songbook. And so we did a bunch of arrangements of standards and stuff like that, which I didn't think was the right direction for her, but that was my own bias. But we did the show and it went well. But I think at that point, I think she just felt like she wanted somebody who really had shared her passion for that kind of music. But we worked together for about 5 or 6 years. We're still friendly, we still talk occasionally and stuff like that. And we had some great times together. We really did.
Also a legend, Donald O'Connor.
Yeah. This is a funny story. So one of the first jobs I got after I'd been in town for a while was being a rehearsal pianist for the Doodletown Pipers.
Oh, yeah.
Who were on the Perry Como show. They were kind of like a Young Americans thing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they were going to do a big show in Las Vegas, and Donald O'Connor was going to be in the show with the Doodletown Pipers. And I got to play rehearsal piano for it. The musical director was a guy named Hal Heidi, who was really good. I learned a tremendous amount just watching him, because this was before I had done any musical director work. And I learned a lot from watching him. And Donald, this guy was a legend. And unfortunately, he had an alcohol problem. And just before the show was supposed to open in Vegas, he fell off the wagon and they had to cancel the thing. But for 3 days, I got to rehearse with him, with the Pipers, and with a real orchestra, a real band, which was my first experience doing that. And it was, watching him work was amazing. And once again, he could not have been nicer or more gracious to everybody. Just real gentleman. It broke my heart to see that, he had that problem,
You're You were involved in commercials as well, as I mentioned. Tell us about that, working in the commercial world.
Well, like I said, I just got to play piano for these toy commercials for a couple of composers. And, they were little jingles. So, they're a minute long, but, you had to play them with the other players, and you couldn't play too much and you couldn't play too little. And the time had to be exact and the feel had to be good. And
Right.
I learned a lot from that experience was that, okay, when whatever I might play live, when I wanted to play in the studio, I needed to make the parts simpler and just really focus on being as precise and clean and with as good a feel as I could muster. And that
Yeah.
was once again just invaluable experience for me.
We've had session musicians and session singers on the show over the years, the Jim Master Show, and they talk about how with jingles and things of that nature, and even commercials, there has to be this harmonious sound. One thing can't really stand out, or at least during that time, it had to be a beautiful, perfect blend of the instruments, the voices. Just had to be pleasant and rounded off, and just everything harmonious, right?
Yeah. Well, and recording is very different than playing live. It just is. I remember, I'll tell you a story. Uh, Jeff Porcaro of Toto was the most successful drummer in LA for many, many years till he passed away. And his brother Mike was a terrific bass player too. And I was doing one of my songwriter demos for Screen Gems, and the bass player I generally used, who was a very good player, but was a live player, was not available. And a friend said to me, "Why don't you call Mike Porcaro?" I said, "Do you think he'd do it?" And he said, "Yeah, Mike likes to play." So I hired Mike. And as we're recording, I noticed something. I played better playing with Mike. My time settled in and I had a better feel. And I said to him afterwards, I said, "Mike, playing with you has just been a revelation. You made me play better." And he said, "My dad, Joe Porcaro, who was a famous studio musician, and Jeff drummed something into my head early on that it wasn't about how much chops I had and how inventive a part I could play. It was about being incredibly consistent in the attack from note to note, not playing too much, playing just the right amount, and doing it with the best time and feel possible." And that's when I learned that being a recording musician was different than being a live musician. They're two different skill sets.
That's right.
Actors tell me that, for instance, acting on a stage, they have to do more and they have to do bigger things than they do on camera. Michael Caine did a video years ago that I watched with my daughter because she was a budding actress on acting for camera. And Michael worked with two veteran stage actors, and they would do a scene, and he would have them look at it back, and then he would say, "Here's what you need to do," and he would do it. He
Wow.
said the difference is
Hmm.
that on stage you have to show the audience what you're thinking. On camera, you just have to think it.
You just have to
And
think it.
it's somewhat analogous with
Yeah.
the music. On stage, you want to be dynamic as possible. You want to be
Yes.
exciting.
Yeah.
That can be nervous on a recording. On a recording, for instance, when I sing live, a lot of times I'll sing it a half step higher than I sing it when I'm recording it
Right.
because what sounds exciting live can sound nervous on a recording.
Do you have a preference? Do you love studio over on stage live? Some people have a preference. Are you more of the studio guy, or is it equal for you?
It's equal for me, but probably I still, because I'm an applause junkie. I have to admit it. I still love performing live.
You love
It's
it,
my
yeah,
first
because you
love.
started out that way, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
it's my first love. But I love being in the studio too. And now that I'm back to doing songwriting, which for many years I had stopped doing, and I can do everything in Logic Pro. I love the fact that I can do songs in Logic Pro and really make them sound like professional recordings.
What caused you to stop and pause doing it for a while?
I didn't see the point. The music I was hearing on the radio didn't sound like what I wrote. The people I used to see, the publishers and the people I would take songs to, were all retired or dead. And I thought, what am I doing this for? And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I said, I never got to do my own album. I'm going to do it because I can do it. I'll hire a guitarist, who I did, and a drummer, but the rest of it I can do myself. And I did it. And I wrote one new song for the album. It was all songs I'd written before. And that kind of got me going. And then I realized, you know what? It doesn't matter if anybody ever buys this or if I ever sell it. The fact that I can do really nice recordings and then go out around LA and perform them live is reason to do it, because it's who I am. And if I'm not doing it, I don't feel completely like me.
Well, we want you to feel completely like you, so we would love for you to, what a beautiful segue and entree to performing something
very, very,
live
very
for
smooth,
us.
Jim.
I was going to say, huh? And,
Yeah.
well, we East Coasters, we think fast, don't we? You
I
have
guess,
something, you want to share some material with us, right? And our
yeah.
viewers who have been welcoming you, they've been loving the conversation, like a Joan Sando watching. Thank you, James. So overwhelmed with how talented you are. So glad Jim gave all of us the chance to meet you. These kinds of comments coming in here. So everybody really enjoying this conversation, Jay.
Well, thank you. This is of all the songs I've written in the last few years, this is the one I've gotten the most response to. I mean, one time after performing, a woman came up with tears in her eyes. And so that's the one I'm going to do for you because it seems to really have touched people.
And what's it called?
Be Kind.
Be Kind. Perfect for our times. Jay Asher.
This world isn't easy. Everyone struggles, and you may not know what they're going through. It's the human condition, and with your permission, 2 words of advice I will give to you. Be kind. Be kind. It takes so little to make someone's day. Be kind. Be kind. Think of the impact of what you say and be kind. Not everyone smiling is actually happy. We put on a brave face to hide our pain. A sweet word or two can make a big difference, and you'll bring the sunshine instead of the rain. Be kind. Be kind. It takes so little to make someone's day. Be kind. Be kind. Think of the impact of what you say and be kind. Why add to the misery? There's already plenty to go around. Maybe choose positivity, and you'll be surprised at the joy to be found. Be kind. Be kind. It takes so little to make someone's day. Be kind. Be kind. Think of the impact of what you say and be kind. Be kind.
That's a beautiful, beautiful song, Jay.
Thank
When
you.
you wrote that, what was the what were some of the additional sources of inspiration for you? Because that is a song that really needs to not only be heard but felt by many.
I wrote that as a reminder to myself. I found myself saying something on Facebook that, while it was true, was not kind and it wasn't necessary. And afterwards, I said to myself, why did you say that? You know, that, what did you accomplish by saying that? Yeah, you spoke the truth, but what did you accomplish? And I realized I don't want to be that person, you know? And that was my way of reminding myself
Mm-hmm.
about how I wanted to conduct myself
Yeah.
on social media, that I didn't want to be somebody who was unkind for no real reason. I mean, there are
Yeah.
people on social media that sometimes you do have to get a little pointed with, because they'll say things that are pretty reprehensible. But this wasn't that case. This was me being unkind for no good reason. But when I play it live, it really does, people relate to it, because I think we all feel this has been a very unkind era. You know, I
Yeah.
won't get political, but
No,
there's
but
certainly
it's
been a lot of
very
unkindness.
going on all over, right? And if that's not, if that's something, being unkind is not something that's in your way of being, it rubs you in such a way that we've talked about it a lot here on the show, just in terms of not specifics, but just talking about empathy, kindness, you know, being approachable, listening more than just talking. So many people talking, and music, which you are, sharing with us here in these wonderful stories, is a great healer and a great unifier, just like comedy can be too. These universal languages. It's a great way to bring people together. And I've been saying this a lot, as I've been always a lover of promo and jingles and feel good stuff. And I work in television and radio, so I've heard lots of jingles and commercials and feel good harmony and all kinds of things. I think we need that back. I think
Yeah,
we need more things to be heard on the radio, in the shopping malls, where at the dentist, or wherever you are, just to be surrounded by a few more things that are a little bit less combative, raw, maybe in your face, judgmental, screaming at you, yelling at you,
yeah,
negative, 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 just focusing on the negative. I really, really do think that our world, as unperfect as it is, may turn around a little bit if we were surrounded with things, not to be Pollyanna or idealistic, though I don't think Pollyanna or idealistic is a bad thing either, because we've gone so far away from things like that. I don't think, you know we are being surrounded by things that are pleasant, just things, even if they're in the background, that really have an effect on you in a subconscious way, to calm and ease and make things seem, maybe a little bit sweeter than they actually are. But, there's nothing wrong with any of that. Music has done that. Television, films, things that we go to have always done that. Having a puppy dog or a kitten does that. I think things like what you're talking about, and you seem to be a big aficionado on it, um, would be nice to see more of in our society. How about you
yeah,
on that?
yeah. I agree. One nice thing happened with that was there's a woman here in Los Angeles who runs a Jewish children's choir, who heard the song, and she said, "How would you feel about my doing that with my children's choir?" And they did, and they did a lovely job on it.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it was
How
very nice.
how is it? What's the feeling like when you hear other people interpret your vision,
Oh,
your
I love it.
words, your music? Yeah.
Last October, I did a show of all my own songs, but I had about a half a dozen guest artists who sang some of my
Nice.
songs, and they all they found their own way to do it, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, there's a girl around town here named J.K. Jones, who is a Joni Mitchell specialist. She does Joni Mitchell so well that when you close your eyes, you'd swear you're listening to Joni in the 70s. But she, a couple of times now, has done one of my songs called Memory Box. And she does it very differently than I do. And I love the way she sings it. And of course, I still listen to Julio's recording of Two Lovers, which I like, and I still listen to Donna and Whitney and some of the recordings I've had. Some of them have been dreadful. I never want to listen to again, but the ones that were good were a real kick.
What are you working on now? What are some things coming up? Things you're excited about, Jay?
Well, mostly, like I said, I'm kind of back to being who I started to be, which is writing songs and performing them around the LA area. On a Blu-ray, and there'll be like there was one about the Beach Boys called Love and Mercy with Paul Dano and some very good people, and they did some featurettes about Brian Wilson and about the making of it. And so I had to, in Logic Pro, recreate Beach Boys sounding music, which was a huge fun for me because I'm a huge Beach Boys fan. So I get to do some of those kind of things, and some of them, there was a film called The Bay that was a science fiction thing, and I got to do all kinds of synthesizer type sounds in it. So anytime I get a chance to put music to picture, I love doing that too. Basically, there's very little that you can hire me for with music that I don't enjoy doing. I mean, it's all interesting. I've been so lucky that because of the era I came up in, I've got to do all these different things. A young Jay Asher starting today couldn't do a tenth of what I've got to do. Too much of that work just doesn't exist anymore. I got paid money, not a lot of money, but I got paid money to perform with my group 5 or 6 nights a week, getting better, learning to sing better, learning to work with an audience better, learning to play keyboards better, learning to arrange better. That kind of work doesn't exist anymore. A young guy starting out now would not have near the opportunities I had, which is a shame.
What do you think about like all the streaming, and even the industry has changed just in how the material is distributed?
Terrible. Terrible. The only way people make money now, if you're not Taylor Swift or somebody like that, is selling merchandise. That's how they make the money. I'll give you an example. The Julio
Iglesias, yeah.
Because being one of 2 writers, I also gave Paul some of my publishing for having secured the recording.
Right.
The first check I got from Mechanical Royalties, which was physical sale of the copies, was $75,000. The second one I got was $90,000. Nowadays, Peter Frampton said for something like 7 million streams, he got like $1,600.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, they have basically eliminated the middle class. So there really isn't such a thing anymore. There were. I had staff writing deals where I got a weekly advance to write songs, and I had royalties from even modest hits, that doesn't exist anymore. You're either really big, you're a Taylor Swift or a Bruce Springsteen or something like that, or you're out there and you're performing and maybe you make enough to have a nice dinner. It's true.
Bowl of clam chowder, perhaps, or chowder.
Chowder.
Some lobster.
Lobster. Yep.
You've been doing this a long time. What are some of those blessings and joys in your life that keep you plugged in doing it? You studied this in school back in Boston. It's something you've done and since the early years of your life, and you've stuck with it, and you've had an opportunity to be involved in so many different aspects of it, from being right there on the front lines to behind the scenes to producing it, writing it, performing it, sharing it, collaborating with others, so many different aspects of it. What is it about it that still drives you forward, and some of those blessings that keep you moving forward and sticking with it, Jay?
I just love it. I'm never happier than when I'm doing it. We did a benefit show a few months ago at the Tarzana Community and Cultural Center that I produced and musical directed, teen idols from American Bandstand. And we did all these songs from the early 60s. And Dean Butler took part, and Karen Richmond. They were on the new Gidget together, and they took part. And we had some other good singers, and I had a band. And we're doing Bobby Darin, and Dean and Karen did Hey Paula, and all these great songs. We had over 100 people show up, and they're all singing along. And you looked at the audience, and you saw the joy in their faces at hearing these songs again and everything. And once again, it was just a wonderful evening. It was all for charity. I didn't make a cent. None of us made a cent. And we didn't care. We had a wonderful time. The 2 days later, a couple of them sent me emails saying, when can we do it again? It was so much fun. And we probably will do it again next year.
You've also had an opportunity to work with one of our dear friends and a big fan of our show, Raspin Stewart. Tell us about working with Raspin.
Well, at this Tarzana Community and Cultural Center, they have a music night once a month, the last Friday of each month. And I had done it several times, and Raspin came on with a bass player and had not done it before. And I saw him, and I just thought he was electric and unique. And I went up to him afterwards. I just said, you were great. I just loved what you did. Because what he does is nothing musically like mine. His stuff is much more bluesy and that kind of thing that he does, and he just great. And he enjoyed what I did too, and we've just become really good friends. He's a very sweet, caring person. I mean, he's one of the few people who, if a week goes by and we haven't talked, he'll pick up the phone and call me. Usually I'm the one that has to pick up the phone. But Raspin called me today. He said, how you feeling about doing the show? Just wonderful, wonderful guy. And now he's got this group that he's formed called the Elderman with two other very talented people. And I went to see them last week, and they were great. I love Raspin as a person, and I love him as an entertainer. He's great.
He was a great guest on our show. And if everybody missed that episode, it is archived on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. You can see almost 1,000 episodes, which is hard to believe we've done that many. Jay, this was fantastic. You've had such a wonderful career. Yeah, and you've had your hands in so much of the music industry, and there's so many. We just sprinkled a short list showing people some of the incredible people you've worked with, the shows, the movies, commercials, and things of that nature. And I just think that you're in a sweet spot where you, like you said, you love it. The bottom line is it runs through and out of you, and that's the key. You're doing what you love, and you love what you're doing, even with all the craziness and unpredictability and all the demands of it. It's still something that Jay Asher has to do because it's in his DNA. And when with some of these great experiences, was the family able to see some of your successes?
Yes. Yeah. Fortunately, it worked.
That's the greatest blessing, right?
Yeah, it is. My parents always encouraged me. I have friends who their parents did not, and they had to come and do it despite the lack of support. My parents always did. My mom used to schlep me around to rehearsals and to performances when I was performing with that children's troupe. I took piano lessons, then later I took organ lessons, which they paid for, and they were always 150% behind me. At times when money was really tough, I'd hit them up for some dough and they'd help me out. They were always on my side. And I'm fortunate I married a woman who never, ever, not ever once in all these years, no matter whether things were good or bad, ever
Stuck with you,
something else.
right?
Never,
Yeah.
never did that.
That's so beautiful. Really, really cool stuff. Jay Asher, this was fantastic, truly. And you're going to be heading back east to New England and to Massachusetts for the holidays, right?
Yeah, over Thanksgiving we're going to visit. It's mostly my wife's family now. Most of my family has passed away. I do have a couple of friends and an uncle there and stuff, but my wife comes from big family in the Worcester area, and so we're going to go spend Thanksgiving with them, and I'm really looking forward to it.
That's going to be nice. Yeah. Fall in New England, beautiful. Absolutely. Jay, this really was a treat. And I really hope that you'll stop by again. Let's stay connected. Maybe if you are in this area, maybe we'll see each other. If you're,
That would be
we're here,
great.
we're in the Northeast here ourselves. And I hope you'll come back again and spread the word about our show to other folks. That's, as you've seen and witnessed
Absolutely will.
yourself, one tells the next. It takes a village. And I hope you enjoyed the time with me as much as I absolutely have with you, Jay. It was a
I
pleasure.
I very much did, Jim. I appreciate it.
And thanks for performing too, and taking time to do that. We really appreciate that. And such a great song, which is so needed. Be kind. Where can people find that? And of course, we mentioned the website as well. But is that on disc? Is that available for download? That song?
No, it's on. I have a SoundCloud page that it's on there. The
Great.
what would be available for sale if they like what they hear in SoundCloud, I have a CD called Honestly that's on all the usual places where you would buy it, Bandcamp or Apple
Yeah.
Music or any of those. I'd love that. But if somebody really wants a copy of Be Kind, if they email me, I'll be happy to send it to them.
Fantastic.
Yeah, my email's j@jasher.com. Very simple. And I'll be happy to send them a copy of
Very nice. Very, very kind of you, Jay.
it.
All right. Well, stop by again. As I always say,
Will
my
do.
friend, we will keep the porch light on for you. And I hope the show met whatever expectations you had, my friend.
It exceeded them.
I
It was a
appreciate that.
pleasure. It really
As,
was. You're a
as
wonderful host, and I appreciate it very much.
my father, as I've said, and this audience has heard many times, but I've said it many years before I ever started the Jim Masters show. And I love this line. My father, from New York, Irish New York, wit, charismatic guy. He has always said and told me when I was 7, 8 years old, Jim, whenever anybody's, and this is like 7, 8 years old, he's telling me this adult advice, which still sticks today. Whenever anybody says something kind or nice to you, ask them to please put it in writing and address it management. And how true is that, right?
Very
How,
true.
how
That's a terrific.
true. That
Your
is so
father was
perfect.
a very wise man, Jim.
Yes, he is. Absolutely. He absolutely is.
Oh, so
And
you're blessed that you still have your father.
yes, he's
My
still,
parents, both of them died within 4 months of each other 2 years ago,
did
and
they
I'm still,
really?
yeah. Well, my dad
How
was
long ago?
98.
Oh,
This was
God
2 years
bless.
ago. My dad was 98. My mom was just about to turn 93. So I'm
Oh,
genetically, I'm riding a good roll here.
you've
I
got a
don't
good,
know.
you've got
Very well.
lots of more stories and more music to, that's it. Your song isn't over yet, Jay Asher.
No, hopefully not.
Well, we will meet again, and this really was a pleasure. And spread the
If
word
you
about it.
happen to come out to LA, please let me know and we'll get together and grab a bite.
Break bread, absolutely. What will we have? Some chopped liver, some bagels, some good matzah soup. I had it the other night at the Ridgefield
Uh,
Playhouse.
yeah,
Matzah
there's a
soup.
place out here called Brent's Deli. That's the probably the best one of the two or three best delis in Los Angeles. So it's not New York. I mean, nothing
Right.
beats
Yeah.
Katz's, but
Oh, Katz's. Yes.
oh
Right.
yeah, Katz's
That's
is
one of the
amazing.
great things about growing up in the New York area, or even maybe the Northeast, is the exposure to all the different cultures and all the different cuisines, too.
Hmm.
I mean, we've had everything you can think of. So when I go out to eat, or, if the family and the friends are all saying, gee, where do you want to go? Or you want to, I'm great. It could be Greek, it could be Thai, it could be anything. And I'm very easy because I'll try a lot of different things and like a lot of different things.
Me
And
too. Me too. There's very few cuisines I don't
that
like.
I don't go for, right? The only thing I
Yeah.
don't like is soggy white bread. That's about it. That's when you lose me. A peanut butter and jelly sandwich where the jelly is seeping through the white bread. Not
I
so
like
good.
peanut butter. Don't like mixing it with jelly. Never
No.
did.
Now, but growing up in the Boston area, did you have fluffernutters?
Yeah, we had
Like the
fluffernutters. All right.
the
Yep.
fluff with the peanut butter.
Marshmallow fluff. Yeah.
Oh, if you ever have it toasted on an English muffin, Jay,
Now,
wow.
wait a minute. You're from New York. I have a question for you. You have a thing called an egg cream,
They
which
do,
we in
yes.
Boston call a phosphate because
Oh, is that
there's
what they
no
call it? A
egg in it,
phosphate? Yeah.
chocolate phosphate. There's no egg and there's no cream. Why is it an egg cream?
Because
Explain that to me.
because they're New York and that's it. Keep it moving, folks, right? That is funny. Oh my God. I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah. Well, what sounds better, eating an egg cream or a phosphate? If you were
Phosphate,
gonna,
it's basically seltzer water with
it
chocolate
is.
syrup, which is
It
basically
is.
what an egg cream is, right? You know,
But if you like have it on the menu and you see egg cream or you see phosphate,
you would never see egg cream on a menu in New England. You just
no, no,
would
no,
never
no,
see
no,
it.
no,
No.
no, no, not at all. You might actually there was a restaurant I went to. I forget it was in New York, long gone maybe. And it was a very fancy restaurant, and they had, believe it or not, they had fluffernutter. They had a fluffernutter sandwich, peanut butter with the marshmallow fluff, toasted, and it was about $10 for the sandwich, but it was on the menu next to the
That's
lobster, the
hysterical.
steak, and all the rest.
That's
Yeah,
hysterical.
it really is cool. Pam Stubbs eats peanut butter out of the jar. So do I.
One thing
Takes.
I will tell you, I got one thing that we didn't discuss. If it runs out of time, let me know.
Oh
But
yeah.
I got the chance to go to New York and play for the Von Trapp grandchildren on Good
Did you?
Morning America and Good Day New York.
When was that? How long ago?
Oh, Jesus, probably
Because
15 years ago, I
they were
want to say.
celebrating. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because they were performing, doing all their grandparents' songs and stuff. And I got to do that with them. And what amazed me about New York is I could walk out of my hotel and it didn't matter what direction I walked in, where I was going, there was always something interesting to see. There was always a great place to eat. I mean, New York is unbelievable. Manhattan is unbelievable that way. It's just so much great stuff to take advantage of in Manhattan.
Manhattan and all the suburbs around. Yeah, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Long Island, the whole bit. Well, you got lots to see and do when you come back east.
You betcha.
Back east, as we say, my friend. A pleasure, Jay, and a lot of our viewers are thanking you for being here as well. All the lovelies. Keep the porch light on for you. Spread the word about our show. And this will be archived on our YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV, so you can share the link, spread the love for folks who might have missed it live. They'll be able to watch this again later on. And
Terrific.
you be well, my friend, okay? You're going to make a
You
sandwich
too.
now?
No, I ate before we started.
See, that's smart. I always tell the folks that are on the West Coast, eat before we start. Dinner time here. It's about 6:30. It is dinner time. Thanks, my friend. We'll see you again soon, and appreciate you being on the show today.
Okay. Thanks again, Jim.
You take care now.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. All right, Jay Asher stopping by the show. How cool was that? He played live for us as well. A terrific talent. He's been doing this for a long time. Again, as I mentioned, he went to school in Boston for all of this, and he has worked with so many. What great stories about, creating songs for people like Whitney Houston and Donna Summer and Julio Iglesias. The great story he had about Neil Diamond as well, and music director with Carol Burnett, Bobby Gentry, Minnie Riperton. These are legendary people. Rosalind Kine, Donald O'Connor, creating music for television and film, as well as, hits for people as well. But music, Zorro and Fame and Fugitive Nights and Hitting Up or Hitting It, that is. And Nanny Insanity and Blame It on Rio and JFK. There's Patrick Dempsey, Reckless Youth. And even singing on Disney Under Wraps, too. Jay Asher joining us here on the show. Good Guys A Go-Go, WMEX, love it. And a good guy, too. That's kind of cool. He's like right over, there he is. There's Jay and Jim. It's kind of cool the way that popped up that way. Yeah, that was a lot of fun, wasn't it? You guys enjoy it? Let us know. Easy way to do that. Give us a thumbs up on our YouTube channel. There is a thumbs up. You see it right next to the YouTube channel, next to this episode. Give it a thumbs up. And people often say, when are your shows on? Click the notification bell when you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Do that if you haven't. And thanks to those many, many thousands who have and continue to every day, we welcome all new subscribers. And we thank all existing subscribers to Jim Masters TV, home to the Jim Masters Show Live series on the YouTube platform, which we're also going to be expanding even further too. So stay tuned for that. We're very excited. A little teaser there. But yeah, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jim Masters TV. Give us a thumbs up. Before you go anywhere, give us a thumbs up. We would love that. And leave a comment. Drop a comment underneath the episode. Even if you did in the Lovely Hole chat room, which we really appreciate if you did that already. We would love it if you leave a comment under the episode as well, because that helps us get these episodes out to many, many, many more people around the world, which we really thank. Don't forget also, for those of you who always want to support what we're doing, you can always do super chat, super emoji, super stickers during the course of the show in the Lovely Hole chat room. And there's a super thanks icon, a little heart icon that's on all the episodes. And you can also click on that and support the Jim Masters Show Live Entertainment Lifestyle Celebrity Talk Show series. That way too, you can click your support, and that helps us continue to bring all these hours and hours, thousands of hours of content. We are just a couple shows away from 1,000 episodes of this series. One of the first to create a series like this on this platform, and still doing it all these years later, 3.5 to be exact. And it's amazing. It really continues to be a blessing. And the fun part is trying to, coordinate all of it with my busy work in television and radio. As many of you watch often, always here, there, and everywhere. I'm either traveling a lot or on location or in the studio. I just got off the air moments ago. Within like 5 minutes of doing this show live, I was on the radio hosting. And just like Jay said, he loves what he does. I love what I do too. Hosting, producing, communicating, all these great things I've done all these years professionally, and then with all of you here on the show. Thank you, Kathleen Walker in New York, for watching, and Merlin in Canada, and everybody watching the Jim Masters Show Live series. Again, give us a like, subscribe, comment, all the rest, and we'll see you on the next episode right here of the Jim Masters Show. We've got a phenomenal week of guests coming up. We thank Jay Asher for joining us from Los Angeles, California. He's coming back east for the holidays to see his family, which is going to be really nice. Celebrated composer, arranger, songwriter, pianist, synthesizer, conductor. He's worked with some of the greats, is one of the greats, and it was a pleasure having him here on the Jim Masters Show. Always a pleasure having you joining us as well. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, let us know. Communicate with us. We really appreciate that. We're very interactive, and we thank you for the time. For all of us here, this is Jim Masters thanking you for your time this time. Until next time, we'll be right here waiting for you on the next episode of the Jim Masters Show. Be well and be kind. Cheers.